happen?
I don't know.
Hey.
That countdown's kind of intense.
It is. It makes it sound like something really epic is about to happen, and then there's just us awkwardly waiting.
I wanted desperately for it to be able to just make it the clip of Michael Scott screaming, "It's happening! It's fucking happening!" But it wouldn't work. That's really all I wanted out of this day. So,
yeah.
All right, we're live.
Well, thank you for inviting me for this. I've been looking forward to it all week, or however long it's been since you first invited. I don't even remember at this point. It's been a long week. It's been a long year. Yeah.
I'm glad you came out of hiding for this.
I appreciated the invite. It's my first. Yeah, it's my first attempt. Yeah, it's my first attempt at LinkedIn Live. I still don't think I have access to it personally. Maybe I don't know if I even tried, but I've been kind of waiting.
You need access to it more than I do. Like
What's
you
that?
have more. You need access to it more than I do.
Well, I think I would definitely use it. I don't know, maybe once a week to randomly chat with people that are either in the industry or veterans or whatever. But I think I needed a little break from it.
Yeah.
I know everybody's had a long 2020, and 2021 is not really starting off on a great foot. So, yeah.
Did that make you go into hiding a little bit this first week of 2021?
It has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. That's the best coffee mug I've ever seen.
Well, thank you. I think I got this for Christmas, and yeah, it's one of the more elaborate. I'm sure I'll break it within the next 3 months because mugs always break around here.
Yeah.
But but as far as this year goes, what's that?
No, go ahead.
As far as this year goes, I'm hoping to kind of reinvent my presence on LinkedIn. And people like you inspire me a lot because there's a lot of people, to bring it full spectrum. When I started, I tried to be what I thought people needed or wanted me to be. And I think that's what a lot of people make the mistake of doing. You try to fit a mold and say, well, this is what I should do because this is what I'm trying. Here's my ends. I'm going to do this because that's what should take me down that path. And that's what people want to see. And for me, I felt like that was absolutely miserable for me. And I think based on a lot of the engagement I got, I think it was miserable for the viewers too. So, I didn't really enjoy any of that. So I started just having fun and trolling Oleg and doing things like that. And I had a lot of fun with that. And so I didn't care if it got 5 views.
I love the trolling of Oleg. I love it. I love your comments to him.
Hey, there's an APB out for him. I don't know if he's still alive or what's going on. Or maybe he finally blocked me because he might have blocked me.
Surely not.
Yeah, I did tag him a few times in my troll posts, and I just always assumed he was probably too busy to notice. If you remember, I think I even made a few posts when he liked some of my comments on his posts, and I'm assuming it's because he didn't get that I was saying it sarcastically.
Right.
Like I was trolling him, but I did it real low key. So if you don't know English very well, he probably didn't get it, and I'm sure that he doesn't. So it's been a long experience, but as far as I know, I don't even know if he's around. I haven't seen anything in quite some time.
I used to see his stuff all the time.
Right.
I used to see his stuff all the time, and now I never do. Never. I would have to go look for him.
Yeah, same here. Really, though, I think there's been and maybe they updated the algorithm or something because I haven't seen, Dr. Travis Bradbury. I don't see as much from him anymore. Some of the people that post what I would call like standard drivel, they post the same thing every time. There's no real value added to it. They might as well copy and paste somebody else's post. It would be as creative.
Right.
And I see a lot of people doing that too, speaking of which. But, that's always something that I never wanted to be on here. I don't want to see somebody else doing well and steal that and claim, although I will admit I've done that as a parody, as a satire. I have done that, but that was in jest. I mean, I didn't do it like, hey, look at my post. I'm pretty great, huh? I did it like.
It's surprising the number of people that do that.
Right.
Like, no one will know.
They just think somehow nobody will find out. I don't really know why. I made it glaringly obvious when I did it. And if anybody reads the comments, I also put a comment like, hey, this is a direct ripoff of so-and-so, and I'm not really trying to find mine. You know, do I struggle to make new content from time to time? Absolutely. It's hard to, I think that's one of the biggest challenges of social media is you start feeling this pressure to give people something, anything. And I think that's really the issue. If you get into like a deeper social media conversation, which I don't know if you want to, but we are now, whether you like it or not. You know, I think what I don't like about a lot of the other mediums, if you take Instagram, I guess maybe TikTok to some degree, Facebook, all those, what I don't like about them is I think it encourages people to always be doing some kind of look at me posting. You know, look what I'm doing, look what I ate, look what I'm doing today. It's all about them. And I'll be the first to admit, you know, some of my content kind of is like that, but I don't do it, you know, I don't do it daily. I don't feel like everybody needs to know what I'm doing at all given times. And really, I think that to me, that's just the biggest limitation of it. I don't think it's a healthy thing to always think, oh, something great happened in my life. I can't wait to put this on Facebook. I can, you know, it's fine if you want to, but if that's what you're living for, I think that's missing the point.
And it's so weird. Some platforms like it's like they feed that addiction. Like TikTok, especially. I love TikTok. I know you hate it. It's fun, but it's like if you take a break, then it's like you're punished. And well, now no one sees anything. So like, if you can't be on here all the time every day, then why do you need views? And it's like, oh my god, because it's not normal to be there all the time.
And I'll tell you, I don't want to do anything too heavy-handed for anybody here, but if you watch, I'm going to forget the name of it now. I think it's called Social Media something on LinkedIn, or not on LinkedIn, on Netflix. Documentary about social media and how they've engineered it to make you need it. You know, you've got to check it every 10 minutes or you're going to miss out on life. And it's really nefarious. I mean, they really set that stuff up to make you need it. And I don't think that's right. And I will admit, you know, LinkedIn is guilty too. I watched heavily my engagement, especially early on, you know, last January. I was looking at it a lot. It was really relevant to my job. So I'm trying to see, you know, who's looking at me, who's paying attention, how much engagement am I getting on very serious posts versus randomness that I put out there. And I noticed, you know, if I took a week off, they would tank my engagement. And I would do exactly the same thing at the same time the week after. And it's like you would pay for that. You were penalized for that. And I can only assume that they're playing the games that everybody else is playing. And I just really, I don't think that's healthy. I've seen a lot of people, it's gotten to them and they've needed breaks from, you know, I've seen it on LinkedIn. I don't do much other social media, so I don't see much else. But even just on LinkedIn, I've seen people say, hey, I really need a break. I'm tired of the rat race and having to pander to what I think people want every day, or whatever the time frame is. And I just think, especially with the way 2020 and 2021 have been so far, I think it's something to where we need to get away from that kind of mentality. I think if you can keep something going and you can do it once a week, that's enough. I don't think you should feel pressure to do more than that. And I sure don't want to, you know?
You have to be able to like realize that, for mental wellness reasons, I have to bow out and not feel guilty about it. Like it's just social media. And I feel like there's this burden of it's more than just social media, but it's not. So bow out and be fine. That's why I love your hiatuses so much. I'm like, well, I need to take one too. But and you know, for me, for anybody that doesn't know, you know, I underwent a pretty big transition because 2020 I was doing the recruiting gig. So of course I'm on here all the time trying to meet engineers, trying to meet people that either might want to do business with us or they're looking for engineering related work. So I'm always trying to meet people. Then FedEx calls me, asked me to come back. I was doing part-time at first, really realized how much I missed it, just got really lucky and a different guy decided to move on, opened up a full-time role. So now I'm just doing that. So now I'm just an operations manager. I don't really need to recruit anybody. I do look for part-timers, but
it's different, and I wouldn't really expect to find them on LinkedIn anyway.
Yeah.
Not really, because it's so localized. It's not across the country like what I was doing before. So it's a weird transition because I got used to needing the website and the website needing me. And
Right.
it's sort of, it was a serious relationship that now I don't know where we stand.
Gosh, do you miss recruiting at all?
I do, actually. You meet so many fantastic people, and I say that about LinkedIn in general.
Yeah.
Too. People like you, Travis Storms, too many veterans to name. I've met so many great people, especially ones that seem to have at least remotely similar senses of humor. So,
Right.
and they get it because you see other people complain about, some people put out posts and it's always just random funny stuff or whatever, and it's never really serious. And people get on there and harass them like they're posting crazy alt-left or alt-right stuff when they're just putting out goofy stuff. I mean, who cares?
Right.
And I get it. If you're looking in your feed for nothing but serious, useful information, yeah, it kind of spams that up a little bit. But just scroll past it and move on. I mean, unless you're brand new to social media, that's not a new thing. That's not a new problem.
Right.
It's not. So,
I've more recently gotten this isn't Facebook. And I'm like, finally, we're in. You should know.
Yeah, I thought that movement was dying for a little bit. I thought maybe they weren't going to say that anymore.
Yeah. Those people, though, I appreciate them. I'm like, at least I know my content's getting to people that don't keep up with me every day. Thanks.
Oh, that reminds me, I still need to go on Facebook sometime and find somebody doing something professional and tell them this isn't LinkedIn and sass them that way.
Yeah.
I've been planning that.
Yeah. We don't need to hear about your life updates. No. How is the new job, though? Are you still loving it? It's not really new now. I mean,
yeah, I was going to say, it's not new. I love, if you know me, one of the biggest things that makes me happy in any job is the impression that I'm important. And I love telling it that way because what I really mean is I like to be valuable. I like to be needed. And you can see that from my LinkedIn posts. but more seriously, I like when I find a job and I fit in and I can tell that I'm making a difference every day, in a positive way. So, to go back to the recruiting reference, the issue for me there is, and this was really hard for me, I went through a lot of mental stress from this because no matter how good I was, if a company doesn't like a person that I think is an absolute all-star and a killer, they're perfect for the role, and they'll shoot them down like they're terrible. And I wear that stress, because it's like they put their heart and soul into their resume and the interview, and I coach them. I help them with it. I built them up. I sold them in every human way possible to this company, and we've got rapport. And then they just come back and they're like, yeah, they're not what we're looking for. And
no one wants to be the bearer of bad news.
Right. And so, then it's like I'm vicariously feeling that pain because a lot of these people would come to me and say, Josh, I really appreciate all your help. I'm excited to hear back about this interview. I'm having trouble paying bills, and if I don't get this job, I don't know what I'm going to do. And they'll kind of unfairly put me in a spot where I'm like, oh wow, there's a lot riding on this. But like I said, the problem is there's nothing I can do. I can't wave a wand. I can't magically make this client love them, or pick them. And that's the thing that was really tough about 2020 is you had so many companies trying to be really cheap, really look at the bottom line. And I get it. It was a rough year for everybody. So it was kind of just the nature of the beast, but it just, as far as the transition goes, what I've really enjoyed is getting out of that where I had to live vicariously for and through other people for a lot of misery that nobody enjoyed. And I love helping them when we could get success, but I hated the lack of control that I had over the process. And so that's one thing that I love about my job now is if we succeed, it's very likely my fault, just as if we fail, it's also probably my fault. So, what's that?
I said, that's awesome. That's good.
Yeah, I really do enjoy it. It's very stressful. It's minute to minute. It's fast paced, but it's a lot more of what I think I'm made for. As far as just being like in the mix with everything, and recruiting is more like a constant grind, and operations management is a lot more of like go in, kill it, and go home. you know,
Right.
and you don't really have to think about work much when you're not there. Whereas recruiting, absolutely 24/7. You know,
Oh, I bet.
somebody calls me at 9 p.m. wants to talk about a job. I need to hear them out because it might have been the person I'm waiting for or
Yeah.
whatever. And so it's a huge transition. I would still recommend recruiting to the right type of person, but it's definitely not for everybody. Just because if you're like me and you value that, if you value tangible success on a daily basis, it is not for you because it's so hard to get that. And to be fair, it might be different if you work for a big box company that,
True.
you know, if they're so mainstream, if it's like a Kelly Services that everybody knows them, and you might be able to place 5 people in a day, but you're going to talk to 50 to do that. So you're still going to deal with a lot of failure for those small victories. And so for me, I want to be able to win just 99.9% of the time. It's all
Right. I just want success, guys.
I'm very reasonable, you know? Yeah.
And you know the company pretty well, don't you? I mean, you worked there before, right? But in a different role. So
right. Yeah, the only real change what's that?
I said, and so it seemed like everything lined up really well. You were happy
It
there
really
before.
did. Yeah, it really did. The only real difference with this is I was a part-timer before, but there was only 3 of us. So we had a very small management team. Now there's about 8 of us, and I'm one of 3 full-time people. So it's a very different game. COVID really did change the game for FedEx. We've been doing 2 to 3 times the business we used to do on a daily basis. So we have a lot more people, a lot more work, and we've had to re-engineer a lot of what we do because the old way didn't work. And they're not getting us new buildings apparently. So that's unfortunate. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I like where it's going. It's always been a fantastic company, especially for veterans, and obviously that means a lot to me. I think that they do a lot of things that, if I could quickly tout them, as kind of a just a way to browbeat them a little bit on what I think they're really good at. Big promote from within culture, better than any company I've ever been at. I think that's really cool, and they really mean it. A lot of places say it, but they'll do 1 out of 50 people
Right
from the bottom, and they count that, and that's not the same thing. Almost all operations managers at my level started as a package handler, so I love that. I think that's really cool. And even though I have a bachelor's degree, you don't need one for my level. So I think that's pretty cool too, just because, a degree to me, I mean, depending on what it is, they're all different. So I don't want to badmouth them overall, but they're not all created equally, and they don't magically make somebody any smarter or any better at their job necessarily. Frankly, I don't think mine does me any good on a daily basis, and rarely ever has.
I have my degree in chemistry, so there's no one using their degree less than I am. So, yeah.
Well, you missed your calling in chemical engineering then. I dealt with that for a little while.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, like Andy and I both have our degrees, and I guess he's kind of using his. His is in criminology. He's working within law enforcement. But yeah, no, I agree with that. It shouldn't put you ahead necessarily. I mean,
it depends on the context.
It depends on the job. It depends on the degree. It depends on the situation.
But I definitely don't like the idea. And I've seen people post stuff like this on LinkedIn, and I got into some arguments I probably didn't need to get into, but I saw other people kind of start it, so I just joined it. But you'll see people, especially if anybody badmouths like PhD level, oh man, do people get fired up and start? You got one side defending it and one side saying, it's just a piece of paper, blah blah blah. And, I don't know. It's been such a year for divisiveness, and I try to stay away from that because it's just so negative, and there's no real winners when you get into those conversations. Everybody kind of leaves mad. It'd be like going to a sporting event and both teams lose.
Yeah.
Like what's the point?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. Don't get me started on that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So are your kids okay? So you got the new role, and everything's going well. Are your kids doing school, or are they home?
They are. They just started doing hybrid in our area because for anybody that doesn't know, I'm in Central Illinois, which no, it's not Chicago for anybody that's outside of the area because everybody thinks it is. So it's downstate Springfield area, and we've had very little COVID for most of the time. It's not been bad here at all. Knock on wood, we've been very fortunate for that. They've been very hesitant, though, to be ambitious with what they've done with schooling. I think we were one of the first districts that said, "Oh, there's been 5 cases in the county. We better shut it all down." You know, and there's over 250,000 people in our county, so it's not like some 500 person farm town. You know, we have a lot of those, but that's not what we have. So, you know, to me, I am the kind of person, I like to err on the side of caution. I'm totally fine with that. But then I see my 3-year-old doing these Zoom meetings, and I've got, there's maybe 6 or 8 other kids total in the class. One is screaming, one is crying. You know, some of them are completely unattended. You've got some parents throwing around profanity from time to time while their kid's on the Zoom meeting. Like, what? I mean, and I'll be the first person to admit, I let some of that stuff slip sometime, but not if I know my kid's in the room on a Zoom meeting.
Right.
You know, that's a whole different world to expose somebody else's kids to something like that versus your own. I think we all have the right to treat our kids how we want, but you don't get to do that kind of stuff in front of my kids. I wouldn't do it in front of yours. So it's you know, and that's never been an issue until we got into this Zoom remote learning environment. Other people, what they do around their kids, we wouldn't know, and we don't necessarily care on a daily basis if we're not being exposed to it. So that's made it different. My little girl, the 3-year-old Kylie, oh my God, we were asking her the other day, I almost didn't sleep. I was so nervous about her maybe being too scared to go off for school or whatever. She's 3.5. She's only done the remote learning for about, 3 months-ish or so. Excuse me. And she seems to like that. But she also had a lot of days where she was like, do I have to do school today? And she loves doing like partial of whatever it is. She'd be like, can I just do 1 hour and then be done? Or, 1 minute or whatever, because she doesn't understand time frame. But
Murray does that nonstop. He starts it with a negotiation of, okay, I'll do my school, but I'm going to do 1 worksheet and then I'm going to play my games for an hour. And then I'll do half a worksheet. I'm like, you haven't done any yet, so let's just.
Yeah, I respect that. Yeah, that's a good way to live your life. If you can negotiate, always negotiate.
Yes,
that's a good way to live.
Sell.
But for me, transition from that to, okay, COVID is still a thing. It's still around, and like I said, it hasn't been that bad in our area. But I was a little worried about sending her to school out of nowhere. And I was asking her the first day, I'm like, are you ready for this? Are you excited about it? And she was like, yeah, I'm so excited. And it was so sweet. I did not see that coming, because she's a little introverted, but she's also really stubborn and outspoken with us. So I didn't know where she was going to fall into, that spectrum, going off with new people. But she's been really excited about it. Didn't even look back getting on the bus, like no sad face, no nothing.
That kind of breaks your heart too as a parent. You're like, come on. I mean, I don't want you to cry, but at least resist a little.
Yeah, it did hurt my ego a little bit. I expected her to turn around and be like, Daddy, can you come too? Or, something like that. But no, I've been really proud that she's been that independent about it. I did not see that coming, just because she's kind of a homebody. She's always with family, whether it's my parents or us. There's really nowhere else she ever goes. So, especially not with COVID, and we don't take her out very often. So it was really relieving in a very serious way, to have her appreciate it and seem really interested in it. Because it's still just a little short day, but
still,
right. And it's been, the last year has been so rough that it's nice to do anything that even feels remotely normal.
Right.
Just to even get a piece of it, because just because it has been such a long year.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, have your kids noticing? I mean, do they even realize that anything's been going on? Murray freaked out.
Well, he's just old enough. Yeah, he's probably just old enough to understand it a little bit. Do you guys know anybody that's been directly affected?
I mean, we've had it.
Your family did?
Yeah.
Really?
Andy, at the beginning of December, had it. And so through the holidays, we had it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how he got exposed. We don't do anything. We just assumed he had a work thing that he had to go to. So we just
Yeah.
kind of assumed that he picked it up there. We didn't have bad symptoms at all. I mean, we were out for like each of it. He tested positive first. And then 2 days later, I started showing symptoms, but I tested negative every time. And I was like, there's no way. Like,
Right.
we're in the same house. We're sharing a room. There's no way that we're both negative or that I'm negative. But yeah, it just kind of wiped us out for about a day where it was just like, I can't function.
Right.
But he and I talked about it. I was like, I think our anxiety from just being told, okay, you got it, was worse than any of the symptoms, because then it's okay, it's a terrible idea to go to the internet and be like, okay, what to expect, because then it's the worst. It's like, oh, it's over. Game over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you do that, and then we were both like, what happens if we get worse? We can't have our parents come and get the boys because we don't want them to get sick.
Right.
Do we just leave them here with a bunch of like mac and cheese? Like, what do we do?
Right.
But yeah, lasted the 14 days, and then we were good.
So your kids didn't get it, or at least didn't get any symptoms then?
No. Henry had a little cough for just a couple of days, but that was it. No fevers, nothing else. So.
Oh, that's good to hear, at least.
Yeah.
I feel like, that's when it becomes real. I'm not somebody who ever thought it was a pure hoax, but it was weird in this area. They talked about how terrible Chicago was. God, that probably goes back to March, last March.
Yeah.
They were talking about how bad Chicago was. And I knew that would happen because there's millions of people there compared to,
right.
Like I said, about 250,000 in my entire county. But for us, I always knew it would eventually become an issue. And sure enough, we got a little bit of it in the nursing homes. But that was part of my issue coming back to FedEx. I was a little worried about it because I went from a recruiting gig with a few people in an office, and we didn't even really have a lot of cross-contamination. That you could avoid everybody if you wanted to easily.
Right.
And so that felt really safe. And they did a lot of good things to, do good protocols, let us work from home, all kinds of things that kept us even safer. Yeah. But then I go into FedEx, and that's not anything against them. It's just such a different animal, So now I'm going in a building with, over the holidays, it was probably over 200 people. And so, that's a lot of opportunity for somebody to come in there. And I literally did have people at times come in and say, hey, Josh, I want to talk to you. So I come over and I'm 3 feet away from them, and they're like, hey, I was exposed to somebody, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, what did you come in here?
What are you thinking? Right.
So, so we've been very lucky for that reason. I was sure that I was at least going to potentially expose my family based on all the exposure I was going to have.
Yeah.
Sure enough, again, knock on wood, I think we've had a total of 3 or 4 people in the building get it at any given point, and there's been no secondary cases from that. So FedEx has done a great job at a higher level, making everybody wear masks, offering all kinds of hand sanitizer, and keeping what distance we can, and just kind of being smart about that. And I was worried that wouldn't be enough, but so far it seems to be enough. So, I'm excited that for all the hype I heard about how contagious it was, I've seen a lot of things that seem to contradict that. I don't really know what to think about that, but and it's good to hear people like you are, somebody's getting it, but their whole family isn't absolutely miserable and all sick at the same time. And not everybody's having that experience, but I'm glad to hear that anybody is, as far as still getting it.
I definitely threatened Andy more than a few times, because I was like, why are you out of that room? Like, do not come near us.
Right,
like, where am I supposed to go? Like, what am I supposed to do? I was like, I live in the yard. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want all of us to have it. I was like, I'm not worried about myself. I didn't want the boys to get it.
Right. That's exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt too. I told my wife, I was like, man, if I get it, we've got, the way our house is separated, it's one of those, got those old attics that's kind of converted to a high bedroom, and it's just the bedroom, And I was like, well, pretty much I'll just stay up there, maybe I'll like run down to use the bathroom with a hazmat suit on or something. and then you guys can leave a little leave food at the door that I'll just come get and and take care of it all on my own.
Exactly.
I won't really be exposed to anybody. I can be a little loner for a period of time if I have to, but we've been lucky that it didn't come to that. And I think right now I feel like it's going a positive direction, at least in my area. I don't know nationwide, and they're putting this stuff out about the more contagious version of it. My knowledge of epidemiology is I always thought if something was more infectious, or if it becomes more infectious, it has to usually sacrifice the severity. Like it's a polarized scale typically, from what I know. And I'm not an expert at all, but that's always been my understanding. So
right.
I was kind of hopeful that like, okay, yeah, but if we get really just a more contagious version of it, it's probably going to be more just like another flu.
Right. That's what I keep thinking. Like whenever I hear about the other versions, I'm like, okay, well, every year we have flu A and flu B, and there's always this one's so much worse, and then everybody gets both of them, and it's fine. So, I mean, I realize it's been terrible for a lot of people, but just trying to look on the bright side.
Yeah, that's a great theme, really, for last year and for this year. I don't think my resolve has ever been tested so much. And I've told people that I say that to. It's like, just remember perspective here. I went to a war zone twice and didn't think I was going to come home. And I'm saying that 2020 was worse for me than that. So, when you put that in that perspective, if you can put yourself in those shoes, that's what I'm saying was that hard about 2020 is the mental strain of unprecedented changes and things forced on us that we didn't have a choice. And I think it would have been a very different experience for me, and I'm assuming probably for you too, if it was really bad in your area right away.
Right.
It would,
because then it wasn't that fear factor of
right.
What's the worst that could happen. It'd be like, oh, well, we've seen it.
Right. So, for us in this area, I think a lot of people felt the same way. It's like, well, why do we have to change our way of life because you've got a problem over here or over here?
Right.
And I think you can take a lot of small towns out in the West. I think there's towns that didn't even have a case until like a month or two ago at all, And so it's like, why should they change their way of life at a big sacrifice to a lot of people? That's a delicate conversation. And I don't know that, if nothing else, this has been a big social experiment on, okay, everybody do this now, whether it makes sense for you or not. Just do what you're told. And it reminds me of the military, actually, because that's how they would come down with new rules or new policies or whatever. And the only difference there is you knew you had to play ball because that's just how that works. You do what you're told. If you don't have the rank, you do what you're told. And I think this is, in a way, civilians' taste of what that's like when the government comes to you and just says, hey, you're all going to not be able to do this and this, this and this now. Deal with it. So,
we were like, nothing really changed for us. Like we didn't stay out late. We didn't do anything. We don't go on trips.
Right.
So, we didn't mind. He was like, I mean, I know it sucked for everybody. He was like, but I'd do it again.
Right. No, I told my wife, I was like, the people I honestly really feel bad for in all this, somebody that turned 21 last year,
right.
Those
like,
are
yes, we're gonna go out. No.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And I can't imagine. I remember how much I looked forward to that, and I remember the hype and how exciting it was to finally be able to go out with friends and do all that. And I can't imagine then that just being taken away from me. After all that hype and excitement, and plus, I remember when they first pitched it. I think they said like 3 weeks or maybe a month.
Yeah.
They're like, just deal with it for this long and we'll be good. And then that just went away. And then it just became, indefinite, and that to me was a lot of the mental stress of it was, well, actually very similar to when I went overseas the first time. They literally gave us orders that said for an indefinite period of time, and I'm like, if you want to scare somebody, tell them they got to do something for an indefinite period of time. That's such an absolute. Like, hey, you got to do this, and we don't really know when you're going to be done doing it. And especially when you take it to something where you might die doing it. So that's pretty permanent. Plus, you don't know when you're going to get done doing it. That's a real. That's
Were you married whenever that happened?
No. So when I went
Because
overseas,
it seems like it would be difficult for you, but more difficult for her.
right, right. Oh, absolutely. No, I was lucky with that. I got married after I got back the second time, and that was actually part of the reason I got out of the military. Is I just didn't want to play that game anymore. That it's more complicated than that. But there was a mass exodus. I think a lot of people don't know when we got back the second time, especially at least in the Marine Corps. A lot of the I guess you could probably call it mid-level talent, not really higher ups, but guys that are a rank or two above me, said, all right, I've had enough. We're moving on. And I mean, all of them at once. So I went from being kind of a junior guy in the middle to all of a sudden I'm one of the only NCOs that we had, and
Wow.
in my platoon. So, and so at that time, let's see, I was 22 or 23. And, I think a lot of people don't realize they're so young, like they're so young. And to be in charge of as much as they are is kind of insane in a way. When I look back and I think about how young we really were when we were at those levels, if I had stayed in, I could have retired last October. That's how old I am now. So, and it's weird to think that, like I could have spent 20 years in the military and been out and retired now. That dates me a little bit. People are going to know my age for sure now, but,
supposed to happen today.
Yeah, no, that wasn't part of the deal. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you were in the Marines. I think I did know that, but I don't know.
Do I not flout it enough? Is that what it is? I
guess not. I guess not. So fun fact, whenever I finished college, so I had my degree in chemistry, I was going to join the FBI. And so they used to talk to us about like, so whenever you go to your training, in Quantico, they're like, you do your physical assessments with the Marines, and they're like, they're going to murder y'all. Y'all are terrible. Yeah, they're going to murder you. So I was like, these guys are terrifying. They're like, they're the worst. Where you are, it's worse. So I was like,
that's not true. A lot of people say the Navy SEALs are the worst.
Oh yeah. I was
They're supposed to be like one notch crazier than we are. That's what I've always heard.
They used to do their trainings together, like the FBI and the Navy SEALs, and then they stopped because they're like, they're just too much for us.
Yeah.
It's what they told us. I don't know. That's what they told us.
Right. I had a buddy that was going to join the FBI, and I thought he would have been perfect for it. I was really disappointed when he married somebody and they changed his mind. But I thought he would have been perfect for it, and it was his dream job. Like it was what he always wanted to do. Changed his mind. I remember watching movies, mainly Silence of the Lambs, actually, that showed a little bit about the training. Yeah. That's like the weirdest reference for a military or like a government entity. But I loved what it was and the way that they portrayed it and what they do and their professionalism and all that. I thought like that's something that a lot of people I think would want to be a part of. But I do think it's very different than what the military is, because it's still, it's still so much on the civilian side that I think people mostly still see it as a job, maybe not necessarily a way of life. I could be wrong. I don't know if I've known anybody personally that's joined FBI or anything like that, but it like the military is not for everybody. It is a big commitment. Similar to being a cop, you're kind of always on duty. There's no real time you don't have to be that person, and that's a lot to live up to.
Yeah. I was going through everything, made it to the second round of testing and everything, and then they did that big hiring freeze, and so it was like, okay, everything's on pause. Like we'll resume this whenever everything starts back up, and so. You had like your assigned supervisory agent.
Yeah.
And so mine was like, just live your life. Who knows how long this is going to go on? Just live life. Do what we didn't get to do. And so then I found out I was pregnant with Murray. And so I was like, I can't. Okay, I'm out. Like, count me out. Because they were like, you can still do it. Like, there's, great programs for moms. And they do have a lot of good ones.
Right.
But it was just like we knew going into it that whenever you got your assignments, like if you're from this side of the nation, you're going to the other.
Oh, yeah.
I can't have a new baby.
Right.
be on the other side from where family is.
Right,
So
right.
I was like,
You know what?
I'm not this person. So
Yeah, I remember talking to my buddy about that, and I didn't know that. And they do that with the military does that very similarly. Like you get to pick some of your preferences, but
yeah,
it's ultimately their call entirely. I mean, you are more or less like wishful thinking, saying, "Can I please do one of these?" But they're still going to come down and be like, "Well, we need you here. Sorry."
yeah,
So and we're not talking about 6 months. I think it's usually a year or two.
yeah.
Um,
At
so it's
least is what. Oh,
yeah. I mean, it's a pretty big commitment, and you give up a lot of the freedom you would have with most regular jobs, where you want to move to
yeah,
Idaho for some reason, you can do that. A lot of those type of roles, you've got to like apply or try to get a transfer to such and such station. If they don't have any spots, you're probably not going to get it. There's
yeah,
a lot more limitations than you would have with a lot of the civilian jobs. So there's trade-offs. I think there's good benefits. There's a lot of
yeah,
pride and prestige with what they do, and I think a lot of people appreciate that. But again, it's also just a different set of rules and things that you gotta. Same as the military. It's a way of life you got to get used to, and it's. I mean, I saw people that it was not for. It was obvious that they were never going to fit in, and it just wasn't.
right. I was that person. I was
Yeah.
the one never got food. I
Yeah,
was like, why is this a dream for so long? I am not like this at all. So not bad.
well, before I forget, I think I've got like 10 more minutes here. And I look
Yeah,
crazy when I'm looking down like that. I was trying to find okay. So I've got some questions here for you.
I'm so nervous about this too.
They're incredibly canned, so I guarantee you're going to be absolutely shocked at these questions.
Okay.
So my first one is, what do you think, as far as marketing goes, what do you think is your biggest strength?
Inbound content marketing, like content marketing for inbound leads. I do really well with that. And then social media marketing. That's what I do for really all my clients now. I think that's my strength. I really like it.
Okay.
So it's better than the, here, let's send out 1,000 emails and
Right.
So.
So that's interesting because I can relate to that because of the recruiting game. We were talking a lot and debating, doing like mass things to get a lot of numbers and then assuming that, okay, if we get responses on 0.5% of them, that's still successful because you sent out 5,000. So that 0.5%, is enough. And comparing that with me more doing stuff like on LinkedIn, and I might contact 50 people in a day, but every single one of them is personalized. Every single one of them is like, I'm going to look at a profile. I'm going to figure out a few things about them. I'm going to talk to them like a real human instead of saying,
Right.
have you heard about Bitcoin? It's not going to be some canned approach where they're going to sniff it out immediately and think, oh, he's attempting to sell me something,
Right. And that's what drives me crazy about that argument that so many salespeople, so many recruiters have of,
right.
Oh my gosh, you hate email pitches, but you have no idea. Like, we're trying to cast a big net. I'm like, yeah, but you're doing it with the idea in mind that I'm going to send 100 messages and one person's going to send me an email back. So why don't you just focus on the one
right.
and make it a success instead of waiting for the 99 to just waste your time.
Right. And here's to me, here's the backside of this that I don't think a lot of people look at. So, okay, if you're sending, I mean, this is small scale, but yeah, okay, if you're sending the 100 and the one person is hitting you back, well, you've probably just negatively influenced 99 people, right?
Yeah.
So if you're trying to get brand awareness, if you're trying to get people to think positively about what you do, you just made 99 people think the opposite of that.
Right.
So, and we're talking, like I said, that's small scale. More likely you're doing 5,000 or more or whatever. Yeah. And then you're getting all these negative reflections on the company name. And that was always my bigger concern. I've always been a quality over quantity guy. I think that way. I would rather, get a few people who really appreciate what I do than try to talk to 500 and hope that a few of them at least think I did an okay job, because I just don't think that's productive. And ultimately, I think people don't really tend to see it this way, but I think that's more work. it depends on what part of it you're talking about, but
well, I think you have to look at it from best and worst case scenarios. Like worst case scenario is exactly that. You send out 5,000, you get 5 responses. Best case scenario, you send out 5,000 emails. What if all 5,000 are interested? You don't have time for that realistically.
Right.
So,
right. That's you bring up a great point.
Scenario, you shot yourself in the foot. Best case scenario, you're going to leave a bad impression because you simply can't tend to that many. So.
Right. That's a really good point. I remember you refreshed my memory now. I brought that up too. I was like, well, okay, but we're a small company. At the time, I think we had, I don't know, somewhere around 4 total recruiters. So, I was bringing that up too. I'm like, okay, let's say I get 200 responses in a day. Well, I'm not going to have time to adequately deal with those people. So what's the point of getting a lot of response? Let's just hypothetically say that I do, if I can't manage it anyway, and I can't even get the team conceivably to help me with that, because they're not sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They've got stuff to do too. So there's, you bring upon yourself an unmanageable workload, and that doesn't really help anything. I mean, it is a good problem to have, don't get me wrong.
Right. It's unnecessary stress to check a box by the end of the day. It's just,
but at the same time, but at the same time, as soon as, same as that reference I said before, if 100 people are interested and you can't get back to them in a very quick manner, well, you're going to start getting those negative reflections again. Yes. So then even when you've got a positive return on your method, you're still getting negative outcomes because you didn't manage the process right. So it's so complicated. That reminds me, LinkedIn InMails. I hate them. Yeah. And I think they're absolute trash. And I just want to get that slide at LinkedIn out there while I can. I think most people.
Someone the other day brought up, they were like, I think it looks more professional whenever you send an email. I was like, wow. What? I was like, that comes across the same as like a sponsored post.
Right. The problem, I like what it could be. I just don't think the way that they did it, I don't think the way that they did it, or the way that the perception is currently, that I think is on them. I think that's their fault. Have people abused it and used it for the wrong reasons and the wrong ways? Yeah, but they've allowed that. They've tolerated it. They haven't really done anything to curb it that I'm aware of. And, so when I get one, I'm almost immediately like, oh, this is a waste of my time. Why am I even going to open this? And then I look at it, and it's almost always somebody with a sales pitch that doesn't even make sense for me, or somebody trying to pitch a college to me that may not even make sense. And I just don't.
I get the most. They're always so random. Like I get them. It's someone wanting to see if I need help with marketing. Does your business need marketing help? I was like, well, that is my business, so no. Or it'll be a really well laid out email, but they'll have my name wrong, or it'll just be like that little emoji at the beginning. I'm like, oh, you were doing so good, and then you had me in the first half.
Yeah, honestly, I'm always kind of amused by that. I don't know what it is. It just makes me laugh. I actually thought for a while that it might be amusing to send those out on purpose with dear insert recipient name here, just to like get people thinking like, wow, he put so little effort in, it doesn't even have the name in there. So like, it kind of makes you laugh if you've got a sense of humor, and then you can almost build engagement from there if you do it the right way. So I've always liked the idea that marketing is, I don't even know how to put it, but it's kind of whatever you want it to be, right? Because you're trying to get a message to somebody. The method is entirely up to you, and depending on what your outcome is, you can get pretty creative with how you do that. And I find it's funny to me that some people are so stuck in like, well, here's what works. Here's the old way. This is how you do it. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it. I don't even like that train of thought. To me, there's always more way to do something. And especially with the creativity that you can put into marketing, look at, some of the ad campaigns that have come out in recent years. A lot of times when they're really successful, you'll have people wanting to watch the commercials because they're that entertaining. They want to. And that says a lot about that old school. It's got to be professional. It's got to just send a message. To me, it starkly argues with that point of view and says, well, wait a minute. How come this is so successful? Look at the Old Spice commercials. They're idiotic. They're stupid. but it's so random that it captures my attention in a way that I want to see what they're going to do next, and
That's the best ringtone.
hey, curb your enthusiasm, Amy.
Uh,
Yeah. I don't know why I got that or why, but I was watching a meme collage, and it had those when people got their comeuppance, and it was putting that music on. And I was like, I should use that for an alarm when I need to do something.
My dad will randomly tell me things like intentionally to irritate me, and then he'll play that tune in the background, like, what?
Oh, that's perfect. I love it.
But yeah, so marketing, everything is marketing. As
Well,
Ryan Kovacs says.
Let me see. I'll leave you with one final one here. And this is one of my favorite ones that I ever had in an actual job interview. I think it was a first round interview, so it wasn't like some advanced interview or something, but he just deadpan looked at me and said, all right, tell me something you don't want us to know about you.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
What do I not want you to know about me?
Yeah. You can do it as if I'm a prospective employer.
Let's see. As if you're a prospective employer?
Yeah. You're going to work for me. What don't you want us to know?
Wait, how did you answer that question? I think this is important.
I got to think back. This is probably, at least 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure I got slick and I told them that one of the issues I've had in the workplace is when I'm working, I really don't like people to come up and be like, hey, Josh, did you see the Bulls game last night? And, I'm in the middle of something, like I'm analyzing a spreadsheet or something. And I'm like, really? What made you think I want a small talk right now? And I mean, I don't respond that way, but in my head, I'm on fire because you came up and interrupted what I'm doing. So now I've got to regain that train of thought, but not until I dismiss you or patronize you or whatever.
I was going to say, there's no way you let it go easily.
Right. Yeah. So like I lose automatically. I lose productivity because you've interrupted this. And so I think I told him, I was like, well, I've rubbed people the wrong way before because I want to get work done. So I thought it was a good way to show like, hey, I like working and I like getting stuff done and don't bother me when I'm working. That is one of my bigger pet peeves. And I wouldn't necessarily want you to know that, but that is who I am. So I'm pretty sure that's what I used. I don't know. I've done interview coaching a lot for people over the years, especially with the recruiting gig. And I love it. I feel like I could almost enjoy interviewing enough to just do it as a pastime.
Yeah. My brother is like that. He lives for it. He's like,
I like
all these questions.
Yeah. And I like seeing the different methods that people use too, because there's so many different ways to interview. There's blankly reading stuff off paper and just having somebody answer questions and you write the answers down. I've seen a lot of that. And then there's ones where they don't read anything. It's more like just having a conversation with you. And you can tell about 5 minutes in if they're just like, all right, we're going to get him out of here about 5 minutes and it's not going anywhere. Like,
right.
You can tell.
Those are the ones that make me so nervous. Like small talk makes me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't. But
I think with that it's uncomfortable because you have something to lose and they don't really have anything to lose. So they hold all the high ground in this conversation. They really can't do wrong. And you can say a lot of things wrong that'll hurt your, like you say you hate.
Of course, I'm so awkward anyway that as soon as I realize I'm nervous, then it's like I'm sorry, it's out of control. I can't stop.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I want people knowing that now they all know.
Yeah, that's I'm trying to think offhand. I'm trying to remember if I've ever given a different answer for that question. Anyway, I think it's a brilliant question just because it's so off the wall while also not necessarily being inappropriate that it forces whoever you're talking to really think about what they're going to say next. And he told me, he's like, Josh, after the interview was over, I did get that job, but it was like an easy entry level thing. I mean, I should have gotten the job. So afterwards, he was telling me, he's like, hey, I just want you to know, he's like, you should hear some of the answers I've gotten over the years to that question. That's why I use it. He's like, one guy told me he was actually on probation for some kind of crime. Somebody else, yeah, somebody else said something about, I don't know, something kind of similar, like being on parole and didn't really want to, didn't want him to know about it. And like, so he's like, it's really interesting. And there's a deep psychological reason for that, because when we're put on the spot and we don't have time to prepare a lie, essentially, we're a lot more likely to just blurt out the truth. Basically, a lot of people are. And actually, that's almost a way to measure their integrity, at that point, because people are probably going to just have to resort to telling you the truth with that kind of question.
Yeah, you can't make something up for
that. You can't sit there and take 2 minutes and be like, oh, hold on. So it's, I don't know, as much as it's weird and it almost feels wrong to ask it, I think it's a great question anyway.
Yeah.
Just because it's so provocative. It's so, and especially to me, when I think it might be most appropriate is if you have a standard interview process and you're going through it and you're not really getting anything out of the person. They're answering the questions, but they're not giving you any kind of personality. They're not really giving you a vibe for who they are, or what they're going to be like in the workplace. You can throw that question at them and hopefully get at least some kind of piece of like, okay, here's who they really are.
Right.
They told me this.
There's no answer for that. So
right. There's no perfect answer and there's no real wrong answer. It's just, you're going to give something away, whether you like it or not. And they've kind of forced you into that. So from a certain perspective, I kind of love, I was originally a psych major in college, and I actually made that decision when I was overseas. I was on fire watch overnight, just staring up at the stars, not doing anything. And I was thinking, I like figuring out people. I think I'm going to do that for a living, and classic Josh, really, for you. I didn't really think about what that was going to entail. So I just thought, oh, I'm smart and I'll have some education benefits from the military. So, I'll just do it. And then so I come back and I did it for about a semester. And I love the classes, actually. I love the material. But I started looking into it and I'm like, wait a minute. So I'm going to have to be in school for like the next 7 years to really make use of this. And I was like, that's an eternity. I'll be old.
Oh no.
So I changed to business administration after that, because I was like, well, I guess I'll get something generic that I can at least say I got one. And that's the true life story of how I got to be a business administration major from a psych major. I'm assuming a lot of people probably don't go that path, especially because what's that?
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, and for me, it's funny to look back because it is something that I had a passion for and a motivation for, and I love following it. There's a few people on LinkedIn that post like psychology or sociology related topics, and I love following that stuff. I'm still really into it. But yeah, I think for me, I'm somebody that if I didn't have my college paid for, I don't know that I would have gone. I don't love the environment. And for me, I went to a couple different schools where you had a lot of 18, 19-year-olds that I think mommy and daddy were paying for it and they didn't really want to be there. And so that was tough for me because I earned it and I was focused and I was motivated and I wanted to learn something. But then I'm sitting with these kids that couldn't care less about the material, just like high school part 2,
Right.
and that was so demoralizing. Just to see so many people like messing with their phones instead of paying attention to lectures, so that was tough for me, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what my kids decide to do college wise when they get to that age. Just because, I probably should call this. I got to get my daughter off the bus any second here. But,
yeah, then go do that.
We should do a follow up because I didn't ask you enough of these hard hitting questions.
Oh. Hey, let's do a follow-up. This keeps you from going off of LinkedIn too.
Right.
So
oh, no,
yeah,
now I've got to see what some of the outcome of this is, because I don't remember when you do this. I remember when I watched somebody else's. I haven't even been looking at the comments. Are there comments?
There are.
Why can't I see them? Am I like not? Oh, there we go.
Can you see them?
I would have been commenting to people if I noticed they are actually on here. Or can I not respond? It doesn't look like I can. Can you?
I don't know. Yeah, I think I can. Yeah.
Somebody commented on the mug. I appreciate that. Yep. In case anybody didn't see it earlier.
I was gonna say, your mug was a hit.
Yeah.
Now it has to make it longer.
Well,
okay,
just
so
looking
yeah.
up, I could probably do roughly the same time next week if you want. We'll be in touch. Just let me know. I'll be around.
Okay, we'll go get your kid from the school bus.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't want to. I'll be sitting here. I'll wave at him. Be like, hey, I'm on the internet. I can't just come out there. Hold on.
Come on in. All right. Well, it's been fun having you on here.
It's been an absolute delight. Thank you for having me. I look forward to doing it again. And
yes.
If you do anyone in between, make sure I'm aware of it so I control the chat a little bit.
Yes, I'd be disappointed if you didn't. So pretend it's Oleg.
I'm gonna look him up after this. I gotta figure out if he's still alive.
Yeah. I was gonna say he's got to still be out there.
I think
someone like him doesn't just go away.
Oh yeah, no, he's always lurking. He's lurking somewhere, I guarantee.
Yeah, he's probably under your most recent views. So, all right.
I can only hope.
All right, go get your kids, and we'll do this again next week.
Sounds good. Take care of yourself. Good to see you, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Amy. See you.